Hello and welcome to our virtual yoga class. My name is Vanessa and I'm here to support you for the rest of your practice. So we'll begin class in a seated position, so please make your way there. Sit in a cross-legged position, rest your hands on your knees. Start to activate your core, open your chest, and then soften your shoulders. By doing so, you're supporting a lengthened spine. Chin is neutral. We're starting to shift our attention to our breath, our body. Let's invite a generous breath where our belly expands. And notice that release. So for the first few minutes of class, I invite you to close your eyes. Let's give ourselves a moment to drop into our bodies, start to let go of our to-do lists, and start to acknowledge this present moment. Let your breath be the point of focus. Notice the quality of your breath with no judgment, just noticing what's there. Take a deep, generous breath. This is the same breath you can go back to at any time throughout your week. Inhale, ribcage expands. Exhale, notice that release. Neck and shoulders are soft. Now invite an inhale here. Exhale, side out. And then if your eyes are closed, slowly open your eyes. Inhale, exhale. We're cultivating this inner spaciousness, inner stillness in our bodies. Sometimes it's more accessible. Sometimes it's less accessible. We're cultivating that practice. And then start to drop your chin towards your chest. We're going to focus on a stretch here around the neck and shoulders. Start to roll your head from one shoulder to the next. I'm going to open up your throat, stretch the sides of the neck, back of the neck. A few more times here. If you prefer to work on some meditation, go ahead and work on some meditation by bringing your head back to a neutral position. Otherwise, a few more breaths here. Taking care of our neck and shoulders. These are areas that store a lot of tension in a way that we're not even aware of, we're not conscious. As we're looking over phones and our computers, we just tend to tense up around our neck and shoulders. Take a moment to release here. And then head starts to come back to a neutral position. Once your head gets there, inhale, exhale, intentional breath, invite this moment. Release your hands. We'll take your hands right behind your head. Elbows are bent, so elbows will naturally collapse forward. See if you can press them towards the back to a point that's comfortable, not where it's painful. You're gonna start to open up more around the upper back and between the shoulder blades as you press your elbows back. Your shoulder blades drop a little closer together. Now, leading with some core and through your chest, twist towards the left and towards the right. Now, you can either move quickly between both sides or remain in one side, exploring there. Either option works. Always come back to the breath. And then once you've had a moment there, start to release. Inhale, lift your arms up overhead, palms up towards the ceiling, stretch towards the left and hold. Inhale here. Back to center, opposite side. Inhale here. Exhale. Release, come back to center, release your hands, interlace your fingers behind you, draw your shoulder blades closer together, open up your chest, your heart, inhale. Exhale, and release. So we've taken care of the upper body. Let's focus a little bit on our hamstrings. We're gonna stretch our left leg out and press our right foot right against our thigh. For a moment here, flex your left foot, lengthen your spine. Take a moment here to breathe. Notice a stretch activated anywhere from calves to hamstrings. And you can soften that left foot or keep it flexed and then start to fold. Hands can rest on your thigh. Shins or hands can reach your toes. Your focus really is dropping your belly towards your thigh, activating that stretch. Notice that line, calf to hamstrings. Use your breath to notice where your boundary is and fold a little bit deeper if you need to. Inhale. And exhale. Release. Now opposite side. Lengthen that right leg. Press your left foot right against that right thigh. Lengthen your spine, flex your foot. Notice that stretch, activating the calf down to the hamstring. And then release, belly towards your thigh, hands reaching anywhere, thigh, shins, or toes. Breathe deeply. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And release. So we'll go ahead and come into a twist. I forgot to do some on the other side. We'll get there in a moment. Let's take our left foot onto the mat. Take our right arm out, twist towards the left. Hook your elbow onto your thigh. Look over your left shoulder. Lengthen your spine. You can activate and flex that right foot. Take a comfortable breath here. And then release. Now opposite side, take your right foot onto the mat. You're gonna take your left arm out, hook your elbow onto that knee, twist towards the right. Lengthen your spine, chin moves towards that right shoulder. You can flex your left foot. Find a comfortable breath. Inhale. And exhale. Release. Start to bring both soles of the feet together. And fold. Drop your belly towards the mat. 5 deep belly breaths. Feel free to hear your inhale, hear your exhale. Deep belly breath, inhale. And exhale. Start to release here, shift into a tabletop. In your tabletop, you're grounding your palms right beneath your shoulders, knees or hips width distance apart. We're going to inhale, cow pose, making sure you're lifting your tailbone to release any compression in the lower back. And then exhale, round your spine, tuck your tailbone in as you're shifting your chin towards your chest, pressing through your palms, activating that stretch in the neck and the upper back. Inhale up, cow pose, activating that stretch in the lower back, mid back. And then start to move at your own pace. So if you prefer a flow, meaning you're moving with each breath, each pose, I recommend inhaling cow and exhaling cat. However, you can also hold a pose, explore that pose into an inhale and exhale. Cow does not have to remain in an inhale. You can shift into an exhale, full breath cycle or 2 or 3, exploring each pose. And that just depends whether you're placing some more attention to releasing around the lower back or the upper back, and notice what your body is asking for attention. So that is part of our holistic yoga practice. We're noticing how our body responds. We're cultivating that ability to respond to our body's needs. Now, when we're busy, we don't make time for our bodies. We don't tend to catch the cues our bodies are already giving us to heal, to get to more comfort, to get to more endurance or strength. Whatever it is, it's your unique practice. Cultivate that ability to listen to the body. And after you've done a few rounds, start to come back to neutral. Inhale, exhale in that neutral position. And then curl your toes, lift up, downward facing dog. Hold your down dog. You can pedal your feet back and forth, allowing your hips to release side by side. Inhale, exhale. Bend your knees generously. Let one hip drop more than the other. Paddle your feet back and forth. Now shift back into a plank pose. Hold your plank pose. Inhale. Exhale. Hold your plank pose. Lift up, downward facing dog. Paddle your feet back and forth. Dropping one hip more than the other. Bending one knee more. Press firmly through your palms. And then second round out of 3, plank pose. Heels press towards the back of the room. You're grounding through your palms. You're lifting that core. Inhale, exhale, deep belly breath in your core. You're holding your the pose. Invite a generous breath and then shift back up into your downward facing dog. I almost said tabletop there. That's always available to you too. And shift into that downward facing dog, pedaling your feet back and forth, opening hips and hamstrings. Grounding firmly through your palms. Inhale and exhale. And then last round, plank pose. Hold your plank pose. Keep your gaze steady. Focus on a point there on the mat. Don't forget your breath. And then shift it back up into a downward facing dog, or shift back down into a downward, well, up into a downward facing dog. All right, so in the down dog, you're pressing through your palms. You can pedal your feet back and forth if you need to. We're just gonna take a couple of breaths here. Breathe into the backs of your legs. And then lift your left leg, bend your knees, stack your hips, hold. Left knee towards your left elbow, hover, core strength. You're pressing through your palms and lift your leg, bend your knees, stack your hips. Release your foot back down towards the floor. Now opposite side, lift your right leg, bend your right knee, stack your hips. And now right knee is gonna reach towards that right elbow. You're gonna hover here. And then lift your leg back again, bend your knees, stack your hips. And then release your foot back down towards the floor. Shift down into a child's pose. Both knees either close together or towards the edges of your mat. Take a moment to ground your breath. Continuously throughout the class, we are reminding ourselves to arrive to this moment. We are welcoming our breath and therefore welcoming our experience. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. If you ever have trouble concentrating, just lengthen the length of your inhale and exhale a little longer than you're accustomed to. Three more deep belly breaths. And then release. Release your child's pose, lift back up, downward facing dog, hold that down dog. Now take your gaze right between your hands, walk or jump up to that forward fold. We're gonna sweep our arms up overhead, grounding through our feet, our heels, sweeping our arms up overhead, hands in front of our heart center. Inhale here, exhale, 3 sun salutations, release your hands, inhale, arms lift. Exhale, bend your knees, full down, forward fold, soften neck and head. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, release, step back, plank pose. Release down towards the floor. Inhale up, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Generous breath. Inhale, exhale. Take your gaze between your hands. Walk or jump up to that forward fold. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, release, soften your neck and head. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead. Hands in front of your heart center. Inhale. Exhale, release, arms lift. Inhale up, exhale, fold down. Fold down into your forward fold. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, release, step back, plank pose. Release down towards the floor. Inhale up into your upward facing dog. And we meet at our downward facing dog. Take a moment to ground your breath in that downward facing dog. Breathe into the backs of your legs. Take your gaze right between your hands. Walk or jump up to that forward fold. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, release. Sweep your arms up overhead. Hands in front of your heart center. Inhale. Exhale, third round, arms lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, release, soften your neck and head. Step back, plank pose. Release down towards the floor. Inhale up, upward facing dog. And then exhale, downward facing dog. Once in your downward facing dog, plank pose, hold your plank pose, generous breath. Inhale, exhale, activate your core. And shift up, downward facing dog, press through your palms. Generous breath. Second round at a 3, plank pose. Hold that plank pose, press through your palms. Core is active, generous breath. Press through your palms, lift back up, downward facing dog. Inhale, exhale. Here your inhale, here your exhale. And then plank pose. Hold your plank pose. Notice where your breath is. Lift back up, downward facing dog. Lift your left leg, bend your knees, stack your hips, and now left knee towards your right elbow, hover. Lift your leg, bend your knees, stack your hips, hold. Release your foot back down towards the floor. Invite a generous breath, and now lift your right leg, bend your right knee, stack your hips. Right knee now moves towards that left elbow. You're hovering here. And you're pressing through your palms firmly as you lift back up. Lift your leg, bend your knees, stack your hips. Take a breath. Release your foot back down towards the floor and then find your child pose. Knees on the mat. Arrive back to your breath. See what's there. By being intentional, we're building the bridge of the physical, mental, emotional bodies. We're not just working towards physical well-being, but mental and emotional well-being as well. A few deep belly breaths here. See if you can lengthen the length of your inhale and exhale a little longer to support in concentration and to support in practicing taking intentional breaths. Inhale. Exhale. And then start to release your child's pose. From your child's pose, we're going to go ahead and Lift up into a downward facing dog. Take our gaze right between our hands. Walk or jump up to our forward fold. And very slowly roll up to standing. Pressing through our heels or arms dangle. Head comes up last. Mountain pose, hands framing our hips, or mountain pose, hands pressing against each other. We are welcoming our breath, therefore welcoming our experience. This is a practice of self-care, self-compassion. Inhale and exhale. Another breath here. Inhale and exhale. Release your hands here. We are going to lift or practice some balance. We're gonna take a two-legged balance here. You're gonna lift your arms up overhead, palms up towards the ceiling. Now practice keeping a steady gaze here. We're gonna shift into tree pose soon. Balancing on one foot. See how grounded you feel with both. Yet notice the similarities here. There's still those little vibrations shifting in and out. And this is actually surprisingly becomes very difficult as we grow older. It can be a challenge. Therefore, we practice our balance. And then release your hands, release your heels. We're gonna focus here, grounding our right heel, right foot onto the mat. And now take your the other foot, your left foot, rest on your ankle. Take a moment to activate your core. You can take your foot higher to your calf. You can use your hands to bring your foot all the way up to your thigh. Feel free to step in or out of this pose. Just try to find that steady spot. Find a point across the room, the floor to focus on. Keep your gaze steady. You can find different expressions here with your hands, your arms. You'll notice some days are windier than other days. Always invite patience here. Notice that patience is a skill that you cultivate. It's not something we're just automatically born with. Inhale. And exhale, release your foot, paddle your feet back and forth and shift into a chair pose. Ground that energy. We're gonna lift our arms, sit in our seat, activate our glutes, our quads, our core. Distribute weight on your heels. And now be soft with your neck, your head as you fold down. And remain here, dangle in that forward fold. Take a breath here. And then slowly roll up to standing. Head is going to come up last. Soften your neck, your shoulders. Hands in front of your heart center. You take a steady breath. Inhale, exhale. And release. And that's how we start to cultivate that slowness, that spaciousness in our bodies, just by being still. And we're getting ready for a two-legged balance. Arms lift, heels lift halfway or all the way up. Inhale. And exhale. Release your hands, release your heels. Let's paddle our feet back and forth in a tree pose. We're gonna ground that left foot, left heel onto the mat. Take your other ankle, your other heel, rest on your ankle. You can remain here. You can take your foot higher, use your hands to support you, and find an expression here of that tree pose with your hands or arms. Do notice and make sure shoulders are relaxed. For support, your core is active. You can activate your glutes here as well. You're pressing your foot firmly against your thigh. Steady gaze is a steady mind. And then start to release your tree pose. Pedal your feet back and forth. And now ground your feet onto the mat. Chair pose is ground that energy. Activate our glute strength, core strength, quad strength as well. Distribute weight on your heels. Radiate your arms forward. Generous breath. Exhale, release, soften your neck, your head. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, release. You have the choice of taking your vinyasa or stepping back into a downward facing dog, your choice. We're going to lift our left leg, bend our knees, stack our hips. And our left knee is going to reach towards that left elbow. Lift your leg, bend your knees, stack your hips, and now left knee towards that right elbow. Press through your palms firmly, generous breath. Lift your leg, bend your knees, stack your hips. Release your foot back down towards the floor. Invite a generous breath. You're going to need that to support your endurance. Lift your right leg, bend your knees, stack your hips. Right knee now towards that right elbow, hover. Lift your leg, bend your knees, stack your hips. And then knee towards your left elbow, hover. Press through your palms firmly. Lift your leg, bend your knees, stack your hips. Generous breath. And then release your foot back down towards the floor. Shift down into a child's pose. Once again, knees close together or towards the edges of your mat. Deep belly breath. 2 more generous breaths in your child's pose. Gather your inhale and your exhale. It's a continuous practice to arrive to this moment. When you start to release your child's pose, shift into a tabletop. Just take one cat and cow pose. Protect our spine here. Exhale, cat pose. And once you've taken that cat and cow pose, release. When it comes to sit, lengthen our legs out. Make sure you have room behind you to lay down. Palms up towards the ceiling. Core workout. Slowly release. Find a point to hover and hold. Drop your heels onto the mat. Drop your head. And then let's take an inhale here. Exhale, side out. Releasing tension from a week ago, today. Inhale, exhale. Building the bridge of our physical, mental, emotional bodies. You start to lift your arms up overhead, invite a full body stretch, pointing your toes, lifting your abdomen here. And then release your hands. You'll bend both knees, rest that right ankle on top of your left thigh. Weave your right hand between your legs, interlace your fingers. Right behind that left thigh, hold here. You can bring your thigh closer towards your belly, your chest for a deeper stretch. Notice your boundary. And release. Opposite side. Left ankle shin on top of your right thigh. Weave your left hand between your legs. Interlace your fingers behind that right thigh. Hold. You can bring your thigh closer towards your belly or chest for a deeper stretch. Notice your boundary. Breathe into that boundary. And then release. Keep your feet floating off the floor. Grab your knees with your hands. Round your spine, forehead towards your knees. And then drop your head back. Soles of the feet touch, hands. Frame your hips, palms up towards the ceiling. Scan your body, neck down the spine to your hips. Imagine your knees falling further down towards the floor. Invite a generous breath, a deep belly breath. You can go back to it any time throughout your week. Now, when we're busy and we're in those streams of thoughts, we tend to forget, or we tend to fall into shallow breathing. So much so that we forget what our full breath feels like. So take a moment to reacquaint yourself with that full breath while simultaneously softening the body. It's a practice to let go, to release tension. Notice. Notice those effects in the body. Notice the connection of the physical, mental, emotional body. As we physically release, we also release mental and emotional tension. Welcome this moment. Welcome your breath. You can allow your breath to start going back to its regular rhythm. No control of the breath. We'll start to transition into our Shavasana, lengthening our legs. Palms face up towards the ceiling, backs of the hands on the mat or floor. Continue this regular breathing. If you feel inclined to practice deep intentional breaths, go ahead and do so. There's benefits to either choice. Notice the wisdom of this last resting pose, supporting you in cultivating that inner sense of spaciousness, of stillness, the wisdom of slowing down and doing very little. The only thing to be purposeful about here is to soften the body and relax further. It's all right if you have other thoughts. You're just creating a little bit more distance between you and your thoughts. Soften your forehead and jaw, neck, shoulders down the length of your arms, wrists, palms, and fingertips. Even if you're just imagining your fingertips float a little further. And then soften the back, releasing the upper back, mid back, lower back to the area around your tailbone. And then soften down the length of your legs from your hips behind your knees, down to your ankles, heels, and toes. Observing without judgment, just noticing. And you'll start to shift your attention to your breath, inviting a generous and leisurely inhale and exhale. Notice that spaciousness, that stillness cultivated. You can invite a full body stretch here. Restore movement in your fingertips and toes. You can turn your body to one side. Returning to a generous and a leisurely breath where there is no hurry. And then once you've taken another breath or two, generous and leisurely, start to shift into your seated position, moving slowly and presently, making those adjustments with your body that support a deeper integrity with this seated position. And then we'll take a moment to acknowledge that as we are supporting that connection of our physical, mental, emotional body, as we welcome our breath, we're practicing self-care and self-compassion. And by doing so, we're much more able to serve and support others. So always be mindful of taking care of yourself. So on that note, we'll seal the class, hands in front of our heart center, intentional breath. Let's inhale here and exhale. And in the tradition of yoga, the highest in me sees the highest in you. May we walk with each other in gratitude.